Done. I've just booked my place in a local half marathon, which is in about 4 weeks' time. And I'm already excited for it because I really enjoy a half marathon. But I thought this would be a fun video to see how Garmin's half marathon race predictor stacks up to what I can actually do. Previously, it's got my VO2 max pretty close to what my actual VO2 max was when I did a lab test, but it's often been way too optimistic about my race predictions, sadly. So let's have a look at my current numbers here and show you what it suggests. So these are my current values. It suggests my VO2 max is 58. My lactate threshold is 410 per kilometer at 165 beats a minute. It suggests my 5k is 1946. My 10k is 42.25 and my half marathon is 136.11. Oof, look at that trend. I'm just getting slower apparently. Alright, so now I'm even more curious because my half marathon PB is quite a lot quicker than that, but I haven't been training quite as much recently and haven't done as much hard stuff, so maybe it's to do with that. So how about we see how my Garmin race prediction changes over the next 4 weeks as I do more run training, and let's see if we can get that time any lower. Let's go, shall we?
Over the next few weeks, I got into a rhythm with my run training. Primarily, I'm a triathlete, so I had to balance out the other sports, fitting in some swim and bike sessions as well as some gym work. I kept my swim and bike sessions easy and just used them for general fitness. Each week, my aim was one shorter easy run, one tempo session, one VO2 max session, and one long run.
Good morning. So it is the 24th of August, which means my half marathon is in about 10 days or so not far away. And at the moment, I don't think my estimation has really changed at all. So it'll be interesting to see if today's session does anything for that. Right, so on the menu this morning, we've got some 800 meter interval repeats at VO2 max sort of pace and intensity. And I'm going to have about 3 minutes rest in between these and probably doing 5 of them. So I'll be curious to see what my Garmin suggests my VO2 max, whether there's any changes at all after this one, because the last time I did a similar sort of session, it responded very well. And my VO2 max improved according to Garmin, and my 5k, 10k and half marathon times improved as well. So let's see what happens with this one. I guess let's get running. One more. That workout is done. I thought maybe let's just have a look together, see whether anything changes off my Garmin. So hopefully you'll be able to see this. Tell you what, let's take it off. It's probably a little bit easier. All right, so let's see. It's a new threshold, so heart rate. Okay, so it all suggests that was a positive session. And then let's also just check the metrics as well of the thing. Let's go. Has it changed much? So yeah, that changed. My half marathon prediction, I think, has come down by 20 seconds. So not really that much. So I guess let's do more running, see what happens.
Hey, good morning. So it's Sunday the 27th of August and it's a week before the half marathon, and I'm doing my final bigger, harder, whatever session you want to call it before the race. It's one I did before my last half marathon and I really enjoyed it. It's a session where I run 1k about 15 seconds slower than my target half marathon pace, and then 1k about 15 seconds faster than my target half marathon pace, repeated 6 times. I'm curious to how this goes because the last time I did this session, I ran a 10k PB without really meaning to, And if I run the same sort of pace today, then it's going to be quite significantly different to what my watch currently thinks I can run a 10K in. Before I head out, I thought I'd just show you my workout quickly, in case you didn't know about it, because it's a super cool feature. And if you don't have a Garmin, I'm sorry, but maybe your watch has something similar. Okay, so you go down here in the corner to More, and then you go to Training and Planning, and you go to Workouts, and you can see my half marathon prep one here, which I've made. It's pretty self-explanatory. These are basically the steps, and it will run through it whilst you're doing it. So it's got the warm-up, it's got my run repeats at the target interval pacing that I want it to have. And the reason I like it so much is because it will just automatically go through it while I'm running, so I don't have to think about how far I've ran, so like whether I've hit the 1K mark or anything like that. And because I put the pacing on it as well, it'll also shout at me if I'm running too fast or too slow, so it'll keep me honest. This is also a chance to triple or double check my breakfast, and I've got a couple of slices of toast with some honey, an espresso, and a carb electrolyte drink mix. So I'm gonna have my breakfast, and then we're gonna go running.
Oh, that was tough. And I don't know if you saw at the end, it was suggesting I was going too slow anyway. Right, well, we have a cool down and get home. So that was pretty hard, and it was a bit harder than I had hoped. Many possible reasons for that. It might be that I've just done quite a lot of training recently and I'm a bit tired. Might be that I think I probably did start a bit harder than I should have, and it really bit, and I had to have a real slowdown in the middle until I could then just catch up and get back into it. Or it might just be I'm not as fit as I thought, and maybe Garmin is right. I'd hoped it might not be though, but it was definitely harder than the last time I did it. So let's have a look at the stats. Right, so hopefully you can see this. Let's see what happens from this. I mean, that was probably a 9, and I'd say I kind of felt pretty middle of the road there. All right, so not the best. Thinks heart rate, pace and power all down. Well, let's go with it. Let's listen to Garmin. And anything else coming from this? No. All right. Maybe not my finest. So at the moment, it's looking like Garmin might be right, and I'm not as fit as I thought I might be, which is a bummer. So 1 week to go, not much is really going to change in that time. A bit of training, lots of eating, and just, yeah, keeping going. So let's catch up in a bit.
It's race day, and I'm ready. It's pretty weird actually being so close to my house. It's been like a really leisurely morning, and I feel like I've probably left it too late to leave because I've been so relaxed. But anyway, I think my Garmin thinks I'm still on for about a 1:35 half marathon today, so hopefully I'm going to go and prove it wrong. Let's go, and I'll see you on the other side.
That was tough. It was slower than I thought. It was harder than I thought. It was hotter than I thought. Yeah, that was tough. I enjoyed it for the most part though. As most kind of half marathon races, there's bits which aren't quite so fun, bits which felt pretty easy, relatively speaking, and bits which sucked, and it definitely had all of those. I suppose I'll show you the results now, and we can go through it. So let's go to, hopefully you can see this, the race. It was 1:31.56. I think my official time was 1:31.51. And then if we go down to the performance kind of times, I'm not sure that those have changed at all, but that, I mean, all of those have come down a bit. 1:32.16. I mean, Garmin, I just ran a half marathon quicker than that. Surely you can bring that down just a bit more. But I suppose, I think Garmin's, it predicted me was 1:35, was it? So it's not too far off. I think what I'm going to do is have a look a bit more through the numbers, analyse it a bit, give you some thoughts on it, and my overall kind of opinion on how well Garmin manages prediction times. So we'll catch up in a bit.
Yo, that really was a hard race. I've had a chance to reflect on it now, as it's the 14th of September, so about a week and a half after. I enjoyed most of it, and it was a decent time. It was nowhere near a PB for me, which by the way is 1:24.59, and secretly I was hoping I would get closer to that, but it is what it is. I thought I'd share a couple of learning points from this whole experience, and I'd love to know if you've had similar outcomes or instead completely different. So first up was that my Garmin prediction was relatively close to my actual run time, but there are a few caveats with it. At the time, Garmin predicted that I would run it in just over 1:35, and I ran it in just under 1:32, so about 3 minutes difference. And I've got a few thoughts on this. Firstly, it was obviously close, and so I feel comfortable in saying that loosely it got the prediction right. I suspect it was a little unfair in that the day of the race was far hotter than expected, and far hotter than any of the training runs that I'd done in the preceding few weeks, so that will have impacted my time a little bit. Had it been cooler, I suspect I would have ran under 1:30, but as I say, it was relatively close. So for beginners, I actually think this is a reasonable thing to consider. If you don't know what sort of pace is possible and you don't know what to aim for, then your Garmin might be a pretty good indicator for you, and you could use that as something to target. Sure, you might be a bit faster or slower, but it's probably somewhere in the right ballpark, and you could use it as a starting point. But this brings me on to the second point within this whole first point, and that's not to be limited by that time. Yes, it might be good for a rough time, but don't let it completely dictate what you're capable of. If you're anything like me, then it's really easy to focus on the numbers and think, I can't hold that pace, or I'm running too fast, and basically psych yourself out of it. I actually ran my 1:24 half marathon without even looking at my watch, and I think it really helped that time because I wasn't limited by worrying that I was running too fast or that I couldn't sustain that pace, and instead just ran to what I was really capable of doing. So I guess to sum it up, I would say use the race predictor as a guide and not as an enforced rule. Secondly, I learned that only my hard sessions positively impacted my VO2 max on my Garmin. Any of my longer, slower runs on Garmin either did nothing for my VO2 max or instead actually decreased it, and I had a lovely new update from Garmin saying my VO2 max was decreasing. Cheers for that, Garmin. Now this does actually make sense when you go into the core of it. Hard sessions are when you're going to be working at or around your VO2 max, so the maximum amount of oxygen you can utilize, and the longer, easier, slower stuff just isn't going to challenge your system in the same way. So yeah, this is going to be the time when you're most likely to see a positive uptick in your VO2 max. But what I want to highlight is that your VO2 max is only a part of your overall fitness, and in my opinion should only account for a small amount of your training. The majority of your training should be easy, breathe through your nose sort of training, and not hard sessions. The risk of looking at something like your Garmin VO2 max or other performance indicators is to say, well, that training didn't improve my VO2 max, or it even made it worse, and therefore that training is bad for me and I'm going to do less of it. Don't be lulled into thinking that only the hard stuff counts, because that's a recipe for disaster and it's simply not true. To be fair, the newer Garmins do have a built-in workout function, and I've been impressed with mine with how often it tells me to just do base easy mileage, so that's awesome. But basically, don't get too caught up in the performance numbers. And I think those are my two big takeaways from this, and I'd love to know what you thought of them and whether you've had similar experiences, so let me know in the comments. Here's another couple of videos for you to watch, and with that, have a good day, nutrition nerds.